conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this regular meeting of the Vader City Council. It is Wednesday, July 29th, 2025, 6 p.m. Correction, welcome to this adjourned meeting of the Vader City Council. This was the January 1st meeting that was adjourned to January 29th. Roll call.
Mayor Shai.
Here.
Sheila Goff.
Here.
Randy Hall.
Here.
Mike Parsons.
Here.
Mike Ferguson.
Mr. Ferguson did ask to be excused.
Jason Daly.
And he also asked to be excused. We do have a quorum. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mayor's report, keeping it short and sweet this meeting. The May Day planning meetings have begun. The next meeting is Monday, February 10th at 5:30 at the tracks. So if you'd like to be involved in helping out the May Day committee, which is an all volunteer, non-city run event, please do help. They could use everyone's assistance. Any council members have any reports? Okay, agenda approval. I do have one addition. It would be item number 5 for council to consider the wastewater plant chlorine pump purchase.
It would be number 5. And we have 6.
Let me scroll down because
Number 7.
Number 7. I could only see through 4 on my screen until I scroll down, so my apologies.
I make a motion that we approve the agenda for the January 29th meeting with the addition of number 7, the wastewater
Chlorine pump purchase.
chlorine pump purchase.
Now we have a motion by Mr. Parsons. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Goff. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Minutes approval.
Make a motion that we approve the city council meeting minutes for January 15th, 2025.
We have a motion by Mr. Parsons to approve the minutes for January 15th. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Goff. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Randy, I don't think I got your vote.
I said aye.
On the minutes. Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Motion carries. Voucher approval.
Make a motion for the vouchers amended, extended December 2024 for $102,181.03 and the end of January 2025 at $10,821.26.
We have a motion by Mr. Parsons to approve the vouchers as stated. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Goff. Discussion? All those in favor of approving the vouchers say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. There's a little aye.
It was a little aye.
Special reports. Althea Fiber Broadband Service. I don't see Skylar here tonight for that report. So we'll move on to Chris Fritsch, the Castle Rock Superintendent. Mr. Fritsch, please. Yeah, we'll just jump right to you.
Okay, thank you.
The Superintendent of Schools. Yes, please.
Up here, okay. Well, thank you. I hadn't really prepared a whole lot to say tonight, but just wanted to introduce myself. I do want to introduce the Castle Rock School Board Chair, Violet Sundberg, is also here tonight. The mayor and I connected here a couple weeks ago. In part, wanted to talk about how the Castle Rock School District and the city of Vader can maybe be more engaged with one another, and how we can collaboratively maybe put some things together to have the school district be more of a presence within the city of Vader and vice versa, and how we can maybe better utilize the property right now versus just sitting empty. So I left really encouraged and looking forward. I just hoping we can meet again in the coming, hopefully days, not weeks or months, and continue our conversations, because I think there's some opportunities here where we can have a better presence in knowing that the Vader kids are our kids, and you know, not to talk about the past, but let's, in the future, moving forward, how can we be a better partner and have more presence? So looking forward to that, and I can answer questions if you like. Is it?
I have a question.
Sure.
Absolutely, with your time, whatever you want.
Yeah.
I have a
So-
question.
Any discussions with you or the school board about doing something with the little kids up there, maybe kindergarten, first grade, so they don't have to get on the bus at 7 in the morning?
We're nothing, I guess, formally, but that's some of the ideas that are being bounced around. One of our challenges right now is we don't have the lack of bus drivers. So we're trying to recruit people for busing. The challenge, if the question is about housing some students here in Vader again, we'd have to explore that to see what the need is. And a lot of it's, to be honest with you, is financially based. But, yeah.
I would imagine that if you stop busing the little kids, you need less buses. Right? If you, use that building for kindergarten, first grade.
Yeah.
That'd be, 2 in 1, that would be less buses.
Potentially, but we'd still need to bus the kids that are here. But it's a numbers game, and right now the buses are pretty full. So if we could add another driver, we could maybe not have to do so many stops. And you're right, if there was enough kids that we could house a classroom here too, that could possibly alleviate it.
Well, it seems to be a mess of little kids around. Doesn't it? Seems like there's a lot.
There's a mess.
Oh, it's a mess. So I would imagine.
Do we know how many kids, kindergarten, first grade kids we have here in Vader?
I can look at, I don't have the number off the top of my head, and I can,
A lot of them are home.
Joe, and the challenge is some of the kids you might see here in Vader, though, they could be going to Toledo and Winlow too, so, and Castle Rock. So, again, but I can point out the exact number of Vader students. And we also would have the names of the Vader students that choose to go to Winlock or Toledo.
Oh, okay.
So that's really all I wanted to share tonight. We do have a levy coming up. It's not live, came up here. But actually, my real hope is that maybe building some better connections that and come back in 3 years and talk about the levy. And, obviously, they're important to all school districts in the state of Washington. The levy for the Castle Rock School District does make up about 13% of our overall budget. So it's critical to have that to continue offering the services we do offer and programs we do offer.
When is the levy coming up, in 3 years?
It's, you should have received the ballots.
Last week.
Now?
Yeah.
No, I didn't get anything.
So
Okay, how much, just out of curiosity, are you wanting?
the rate that we used was, the current levy will expire at the end of this calendar year. And the rate that was approved was $1.98 per thousand assessed value. What the actual rate is $1.62 per assessed valuation. And what you would be voting on is the 2026 through 2028 it'd be renewing the current levy, and the rate we used was $1.72
Per thousand?
per thousand, yeah. So,
Okay.
and we are, I know it's kind of, your ballots are coming probably from, I'm assuming from the Lewis County Elections Office. So I know that the Calais County ballots were received this weekend. They should have all been put in the mail at the same time, so,
Yeah, I saw mine in my preview thing I get by mail, so
okay.
I know it's coming.
Wait.
So on February 11th is the actual election, if you can say that anymore, with mail-in ballot. So please take a look and consider it.
What's the total you're looking for? How many millions of dollars?
For 2026, it will be 3.38 million, I believe it is, and then it goes up incrementally over the 3 years. I think the third year, it's right around 3.85 million,
That's only 17% of your budget,
13%.
13%
Yeah.
of your budget.
Our current budget this year is $23.6 million. And we're right now in the process of building the budget for the 25-26 school year. And right now, there's a lot of unknowns because we're in a legislative session where the legislature returned the biennium. And so right now, we don't know where the state's at as far as funding their share. So, of course, I think every superintendent in the state of Washington would say that the state doesn't fully fund basic education. And it seems to always be a struggle to out of Olympia to.
Chris, would you like touch on that piece for paraeducators that we don't get funded, nurses we don't get funded for, kind of besides the other activities, the ones that affect the classroom?
Yeah, what the levy you're voting on is supposed to fund programs, staff for the things that fall, what would be considered falling outside of basic education. The reality is the local levy money goes towards paying for the people that we actually need. I'll give an example. The number of classroom aides or paraeducators that the state funds is the equivalent of not quite 2.5 people. We employ 33.5 full-time equivalent paraeducators to serve our kids. And if you ask our principals and our teachers, they would tell you that's not enough. So the levy money gets directed to filling those positions. School psychologists, I think we get funded for the equivalent of about 2/10 of a school psychologist. And we employ a full-time school psychologist. And there's a number, just about every position we have in our system, and this would be true for just about every school district as well in the state. Districts actually require more people than are actually funded by the state. So that's why a lot of times you'll hear that the EPO is levies are really for educational opportunities and programs is really backfilling the shortfall for what the state doesn't pay for.
Any plans to build, I hear or see online that a lot of the classrooms are very crowded, very full, and the new grade school is possibly needed. Any plans for that?
Actually, I would say our classrooms aren't full. We try to maintain relatively comparatively competitive numbers for neighboring districts. Our kindergarten classes average 19 students. Our third and fourth grades are in the 23, 24. Now, depending on who you talk to, some people say those are really good numbers, and the next person might tell you that's way too many. But it's not unusual in some districts that those class sizes are in the mid to high 20s and even the 30s. In order to build a new school, we would have to pass a bond. Castle Rock hasn't had much success in passing bonds in the last 20 years. New school construction and even modernization, you're looking at it, if things were to level out, you're looking at about at least $400 per square foot for new or modernizing the existing buildings. The buildings in Castle Rock are starting to show their age and are probably aging out. So until we can pass a major bond, we're trying our best to maintain the buildings as we can. That's why last year voters approved a capital levy, which raises smaller amounts. It's million, it's next year it'll be about $800,000 that will be generated from the capital levy, and that money is directly for upkeep and small repairs and improvements to the buildings. You can't use capital levy money to pay for people or positions. So capital levy helps supports upkeep, the physical plant. The EP&O levy is really paying for people and going directly into programs that support kids.
You want to touch a little bit more what we used that money for last year, high school and elementary?
The capital levy,
Yes.
yeah. So capital levy money has been used to upgrade HVAC systems. I don't know that in Castle Rock High School, in a couple parts of the building, they ever had actual air conditioning. So for half of the building, we were able to, this past summer, put in new HVAC system that included air conditioning. And the same, we upgraded, put in a new boiler and updated the HVAC system in the primary school for grades K through 2. So that's what I have. Looking forward to meeting with the mayor again, and so hopefully we can put some things together, and I hope this isn't the last time you see me. So
There are no votes more. Would you touch a little bit on our building here that the board and you are open to use that building for other uses for the city later?
yeah, that's one of the things we talked about was, in that initial conversation, or what are some things that we could use the building for? Could the city use the building? Could we, are there, and again, these are just kind of throwing things up to have further conversations about. Are there some programs that maybe the city could use the building for, the property for, that maybe we could explore their opportunities for some collaborative programs? So I think it's really in the early stages of, but willing to have those conversations of how can we use that property for to improve the quality of life for here in Vader. So
Yeah, I'd say we were dreaming big and we had a lot of excitement, and I think getting education of some kind for kids back in that building is the goal. And so whether it's the school district or the city or a collaboration of the two, I think we're going to be able to make something happen. But
So you have the support of the school board that, whether Vader, if they come up with a good suggestion, that we'd be very open to. It's your building.
yeah,
so that's all I have.
super.
So
Thanks so
thank you
much.
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to meet you.
Moving on to public comment. Do any members of the public have any comment before we continue? Okay. Then we'll move into the public hearing portion of the meeting. I will open this public hearing at 6:23 p.m. This public hearing will be on 4 different development ordinance updates. These have already gone through the the planning committee and been tweaked through them. Kirsten Peterson from SCJ Alliance is intimately familiar with these, and I will let Ms. Peterson provide the staff report on these ordinances before we continue with the public hearing.
All right, well, thank you. As I was introduced, Kirsten Peterson with SCJ Alliance. So you've got 4 ordinances in your packet today. The bills that go along with each of them are very, very similar. But what I'm going to do with each of them will allow you to open and close each public hearing. I'm going to just give you a brief background on what's included in the ordinance. I'll go through some of the required steps that we took from both your code and the state that must be followed when adopting code changes, and then close it and allow you to ask questions, and of course allow the public to speak on this as well. But essentially all 4 ordinances are related to making amendments to the development code, specifically to improve the process when anyone comes in to apply for a development permit. So the first public hearing today is on development agreements. So your city attorney actually drafted these, but the first one would add the procedures, requirements for the use of a development agreement in the city of Vader. So if a developer came along and wanted to propose something that might not quite fit code, but it made sense for a specific property, it would allow the city to essentially enter into negotiations on what makes sense specific to that property. And it's actually something that would need to be approved by city council, the development agreement itself, for it to go forward. So it might allow a little bit different density on a development, or a change in the setbacks, or some unique thing there. And sometimes it ends up coming out to where the city might ask for some sort of public benefit to go along with that. So it's a really nice use of planning procedures when you can't quite meet code exactly. And this essentially takes care of variance requests. And I'm sorry about my background. It looks like it's like shifting in and out there. But with this, following the description of the ordinance, I outlined the procedural requirements. Your current city code does specify what the steps are for adopting a code amendment, and I've indicated all of those on the first page of the agenda bill. And then it is also required that to change the code, you need to go ahead and go through the SEPA review process and state review. So in keeping with those requirements, a SEPA determination of non-significance was issued on November 1st, 2024. It was opened up for public comment. And the only comment we got throughout the process in writing was from the Department of Fish and Wildlife. The ordinance was also transmitted to the Department of Commerce. They request jurisdictions give them a 60-day review time. That was completed on January 18th, 2025, and we do need to wait until Commerce's review is complete before we hold this public hearing with City Council. And my understanding is that you have already been introduced to these ordinances, but today is your official opportunity to take public comment and make a decision. Regarding the comment that was received, it really was submitted in response to the short subdivision ordinance, which is the last one on your list today. But it really is regarding all development, and all of these ordinances have to do with that. And it's really talking to the need to make sure that development follows the critical area guidance from Fish and Wildlife. You do have some standards and procedures already in your code related to critical areas, but there's going to be an opportunity and probably a requirement in the near future for Vader to update the critical area ordinance. But essentially, this is something that a planner would look at with any new development, just making sure that a new development is aware of protecting and conserving the critical areas where needed. And critical areas includes wetlands, stream buffers, shoreline. Well, that's its own permit, it's separate. Critical aquifer recharge areas, steep slopes, and frequently flooded areas. So those are already taken into consideration, and there are mitigation measures that can be taken. But the Department of Commerce, or I'm sorry, the Department of Fish and Wildlife letter does commend the city on what they're trying to do. They're essentially responding to most jurisdictions with please make sure you're aware of our guidance materials for fish and wildlife habitat areas. So there was no real way to say amend the existing ordinances. It's more guidance for future work that could take place with potentially modifying your critical area regulations. All right, so I'm not going to give you that much detail on the next 3, but that's what came down from Fish and Wildlife. For this meeting, it was required to do public noticing, and so that was advertised on January 15th, and the town crier is also posted on the city website. As the mayor indicated, this was also reviewed by the Planning Committee and their public hearing held on November 21st, 2024, and they did recommend approval as an advisory committee to the City Council. And then in your memo, I then outlined the City Council action that you must take and the decision criteria, and those criteria are found in section 27.60.180 of the code. I'm not going to read through them, but essentially it's just stating that you want to look at the amendments to make sure they conform to the Growth Management Act. They're in keeping with your own comprehensive plan goals and policies, and in general, they're in the best interest of the city. Then there's some guidance in VMC 27.60.090 that simply states that City Council should consider the amendments, take into consideration the Planning Committee's recommendation at a regularly scheduled meeting. You'll look at the criteria, and then it tells you that there's 2 options here. One is that you can agree with the recommendation of the Planning Committee, and you as City Council can make a final determination without holding another public hearing and just simply vote on the final decision. Or if the City Council disagrees with the recommendation of the Planning Committee, or there's a possibility you want to change the actual ordinance, you could consider whether another opportunity for public review and comment is needed, meaning just another public hearing. And then finally, the code goes on to state that if the council decides not to adopt the proposed amendment to the development regulations, you'll pass a resolution with the reasons, so your associated findings and conclusions to support your decision to not move forward. So that, we really want to just outline, make sure you're following the procedures. Anytime you're making any code amendments or any procedures that are outlined by state law, it's just really important to make sure all the procedures are followed carefully, because that's where appeals can come into play and somebody could push back on the adoption of an ordinance. So that's really a summary of this first public hearing, but I'm ready to take any questions if there are any.
Anyone have any questions regarding the development agreements, addition to the Vader code?
I just have a small question. Does the city have current agreements with developers?
No.
So this would be a new.
This is new, yeah. This is, there was a developer that asked, hey, this was actually came from 2 different directions at once. The 30 acres up on the hill above your place off South Military. One of the thoughts was, what if the developer wanted to do a mixture of homes and commercial businesses, like a neighborhood that had everything all integrated?
That's county, that's not city.
It is city.
On South Military?
Yeah, it's city all the way up there. And so it's a 30-acre parcel. And the idea was, if sometime in the future, there's no plans, they wanted to do a combination of residential and commercial all in one area, does that work with city ordinances? And it doesn't, because it's zoned residential and residential only. And so, so we asked, how would you go about planning an entire neighborhood like that, where you had corner stores and everything? And one of the options was development agreements, where you could have an overlay for a particular area and have kind of a master plan from the beginning that would allow that. And of course, the city would approve it and all that. And at the same time that happened, one of the other, the Hendrickson development back here, subdivision, it kind of popped up, hey, if we had development agreements available in the code, that could have been beneficial to them as one of the options to go about dealing with the critical area that they're up against, basically the Olaqua. And so the city did not have development agreements in our code. It's a normal thing that cities have. And so we decided to add it to the code, even though there's no one at this time actively looking at it. So, but it'll add flexibility in the future. So that's where it came from. Any other comments from the public on development agreements? Ordinance 2025-01. Not hearing anything. Kirsten?
What was that?
I'm not getting any more comments, so.
Okay. At this point, I think it's up to you at whatever point you want to let council do their deliberation.
Did you say that that we're still waiting on commerce?
No, that's concluded. That their review ended on the 18th, so you're good to go with making your council decision. That's why we held off the hearing until that was finished up.
Okay. Usually the way we've done our public hearings in the past is that we hold the public hearing, close the public hearing, and then we'll move into council motions after we have all the public hearings. Does that sound okay?
That's fine. Yep.
Okay. If there's no other public comment on ordinance 2025-01 regarding development agreements, I'd like to move on to the ordinance 2025-02, the permitting process. Kirsten, could you give the staff report for that particular addition?
Yeah, so this is a new section of code as well. It would be a new chapter 27.02 to the Vader's Municipal Code. And the title is it's pertaining to procedural requirements for processing land use development permits. But what does that really mean? So this is a great chapter for any planner. You want to be able to have a good code to refer to. And anyone applying for a land use permit wants to know, well, what are the procedures? So this is a really great ordinance that the city attorney pulled together for you. It basically tells anyone wanting to apply for a development permit what exactly they need to turn in and what the steps are going to be to move forward through the project. So there's going to be 4 new decision types of approvals. So different applications will be a type 1, 2, 3, or 4. And so a type 1 is an administrative permit, and then it moves up the chain to the 4th one being the most stringent and takes the most work and requires public hearing. So you could look in this section of code and say, oh, hey, I want a conditional use permit. Oh, that's a type 3 decision. And the decision authority is the hearing examiner. If it's a development agreement, the city council would be the decision authority. So there's several charts in here that tell you, a building permit's a type 1, and that can be approved by staff and all those different types of permits, which is great. For each of the types and specific applications you're going to apply for, it will tell you what you need to submit, and then it will explain what the review process is. There's a section of the code that talks about when the city is required to put out a notice to the public, just saying, hey, we got this application. Sometimes you need to hold a public hearing like tonight, and so it gives you information on that. It talks about the timelines for processing an application. Typically, well, this is per state law. When somebody submits an application, the city has so many days, 28 days to deem it complete or say it's incomplete. Maybe there's 10 items required. They only turned in 8. The city has to tell them, hey, it's incomplete. We need 2 more items. And when they turn in the 2 more items, they can then determine it complete. The challenge there is if the city doesn't respond at all within the time period, then it's automatically deemed complete. So the state is trying to allow some predictability and assurances to people applying for development permits, but it also gives staff, as you get a permit turned into the city, you've got to make sure you keep up those timelines, and generally, you'll respond to them in the order received and just make sure you're being responsive. So this section of code is really great because it it gives more predictability. And it also kind of came out of a requirement of a state law that went into effect in 2023. So the State Senate Substitute Bill 5290 is the one that was enacted. It amends certain provisions of the RCW related to the review procedures. And it essentially indicated to the state jurisdictions in the state that they would need to comply with those timelines for issuing decisions on project permits. And that bill went into effect, or became effective, on January 1st of this year. So the city attorney had drafted it up to be responsive to the state requirements. But from a planning perspective, it's great to have this new guidance material to help both staff and anyone applying to do any kind of land use permitting on their property. And as I described, anything from just pulling a general building permit for an addition to their home, all the way to proposing a subdivision, and just explaining what the procedures are for that. Now, in your packet, you got the same information. All 4 of the ordinances were, they went through the SEPA process on the same date. A DNS issued on November 1st, 2024, went to Commerce on the same date, ended on January 18th, 2025. The public noticing took place as required. The Planning Committee reviewed it November 21st, recommended approval. And then your decision criteria and procedures for conducting the meeting all remain the same. But I'm sure that the comments on this one might just, or questions might just be about the details of this, if anyone has any.
Thank you. Is there any public comment regarding this new Chapter 2702, the permitting process?
So we would still use Gary.
Yeah, the city is still the same amount of control over building permits as before. We just have a.
Does that mean there'd be an extra person, another person you have to talk to, or just?
Nope.
Okay.
Just everything is in writing, and it's easier to follow, and for both the applicant and the city to keep track of what each expectations are. And this came out of, like she said, out of a state requirement that we're trying to meet. Questions from council regarding it? I know you've all seen these before. We've had them in your packet in the past. So
I do have another question.
This is your time, public comment.
You have to have a hearing on this last one, set of type 3 decisions. Is that what? There has to be a hearing on type 3 decisions, like if somebody wanted to, I don't know what a historical use permit is, but you have to have a hearing on that?
I would forward that to Kirsten.
Yeah, so the table itself starts with the type 1 permit and type 2 and then 3 and then 4. But like, for instance, you were talking about the historical use permit. Let me find that one.
It's under type 3.
Get the code. So it's kind of a heavy table to look at, but there's something, it's NOH is notice of hearing. So if it says yes under there, it means yes, you need to have a hearing, or the notice will go out and then there will be a notice of decision.
A hearing like this?
I couldn't hear you, I apologize.
Like a public hearing?
Yes, a public hearing. And the table also says who the decision authority is. So HE would be the hearing examiner, CC would be the city council. You've got one that's like a site-specific rezone. Your planning commission and city council would both hold a public hearing on there. So there's little charts that explain what all of the acronyms are. So DOC is that it needs a determination of completeness. NOA is a notice of application, meaning you're gonna like tell the neighbors within 300 feet that we received this application. Notice of the hearing would be sending out the notice, and then the notice of decision is, letting folks know what the final decision was by city council or hearing examiner.
Who's, HE is hearing examiner? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Who's that?
The city has a contract, and for many years, we've had a contract with a law firm up in Chehalis, I believe. And they're on-call services anytime we need a hearings examiner. So for instance, if someone wanted to challenge the city's decision on something, there would be an independent third party that would look at that information and make a ruling on it.
So somebody who wants a non-administrative tree activity permit, I don't know what that is, not a tree or something, they'd have to go before a hearing examiner?
Whatever it says, yeah.
What is a non-administrative tree activity permit?
I don't know.
So I am not completely familiar with your tree activity permits, but essentially that would be a scenario where the staff was unable to give a permit for trees in the right of way. Some cities have really stringent requirements about tree removal and or when you're allowed to put new trees in the right of way, because a lot of times you want to make sure it's the right kind of tree. It's not going to be, as it grows, upheaving the sidewalk. Some communities, they're like Tree City USA, and removal of any tree needs to be approved, or maybe even have somebody that goes out to see if it's diseased or not. And some communities actually need to have city council's approval on that. So I'm not completely familiar with yours, with what would lend itself to needing a tree activity permit in the right of way. But as you said, those ones go before the hearing examiner. And to further elaborate, the hearing examiner is, like, as said, a third-party, non-biased decision that they're just looking at the law, making sure it's meeting city code and state law.
So I'm guessing the applicant pays for that.
Yeah, it would be part of the fee.
Oh,
The idea with that is that then you don't necessarily have the city council weighing in on what their neighbors are or not doing, right? You can have someone from outside the city take a look at it.
seems pretty spiffy.
It's like $500 or something like that.
She is.
Everybody's spending.
Okay.
Any other public comment regarding the permitting process chapter? Okay, moving on to ordinance 2025-03, amending section 27-2360, reducing a PUD size. The staff report on that, please.
Okay, so your city code already allows for the use of planned unit developments. And those kind of fall into line with what you were describing earlier as a potential option for when folks want to do a development that may have a mix of uses, and maybe commercial and some residential and maybe some mixing of the two, or sometimes you might actually have residential on top of commercial. But at any rate, there's typically a size limitation, like you can only have a planned unit development and what you had was 3 acres or more. I've seen some codes that are 5 acres or more. And this code amendment is one little amendment where it's simply reducing the acreage requirement. Instead of being 3 acres, it would be 2 acres or more for a planned unit development option to be available to somebody proposing that. And that's really the extent of this ordinance. And everything else I explained in the other ones applies with SEPA, commerce, public noticing, planning committee review, and council's decision-making ability here.
I'll say that the history on where this change came from basically, one, the understanding of what this was and what it meant for our code, and also what is appropriate for Vader. And so the PUD process, through that process, it allows a developer to dedicate property back to the city that's in the critical areas so the city can protect it. in exchange for things like reduced lot size. And the requirement was that the minimum zone size would be 3 acres. If you look around Vader, we have critical areas everywhere. We're bordered by the Olaqua Creek on half the city's border. We have a variety of other creeks that go right through the middle of the city, other protected areas. If you put that overlay up, it's just the whole city is riddled with these critical areas. And if we want to promote development, we need to be able to give back to the developers in some way. And the city gets back too. We get these areas that will be considered parks at that point. And so the city gets the shorelines back into our control, and then the developer gets to put houses next to it. Anyway, so the idea was that 3 acres was quite large. If we bumped it down to 2 acres, it would promote this PUD use and allow more developable area in the city.
With smaller lot.
Yeah, they can go, it's a 20%, up to 20% smaller than whatever our normal size is. So normally we're 7,500, so you could go down to 6,000 square foot would be the smallest they would be allowed to go.
Aren't we 75 by 125, isn't that normal?
No, we're
7,500 square feet.
No, I mean, a buildable lot used to be 75 by 120 or 125. Buildable lot used to have to be at least 75 feet wide, but that's.
There are minimum, so whatever our current rules are for that, I can't remember what it is. It is a little bit smaller than that now, but it would be 20% reduction. And so
They did that by the mansion.
And so, so actually, both of the two, Hendrickson Development was intending to use the PUD process. They have not been approved yet because of some changes they were making. But the Kessel Court subdivision did successfully use the PUD process. And so this would just promote its use. And like I said, the city does get back these protected areas as public property at that point.
So the 2 lots down on G Street that they're now trying to develop into, it's one 100 by 140 lot down to 2 on that same lot. That would use the same process?
G Street on the north side
Yes.
of the highway?
Yeah.
The
ones right below our.
They are not using the PUD process. Those are not critical areas. So they would just be normal 7,500 square foot lots.
Well, they cut one of them in half, so that's not possible. They cut 100 feet in half. I don't know what it is, but I think it's 50.
Yeah, they still need to maintain the same. They can have an odd size, but it still needs to be 7,500 square feet, and they still need to have keep the setbacks from any buildings they build.
So it'd be 50 by 70. Each lot would be 50 by 70.
I don't have the plans in front of me, but I know that they were keeping to the development to our current standard sizes of 7,500 square feet.
That would be almost impossible, Joe, because the original lot.
I don't have the plans in front of
I
me.
know, I used to own the lot, so I know it's 100 by 140.
Yeah.
And they're cutting it in half.
So, I mean, if they already exist, this is not about the PUD process, so it's off topic, but it's, if the lots already exist, they're considered, grandfathered is the wrong term.
Legally pre-existing lot or non-conforming lot. perhaps.
Non-conforming, yeah, they're non-conforming lots, but they already existed. And so if a lot is smaller and it was made before our current development guidelines, you can still build on it. You just can't make a new lot that's less than 7,500 square feet. So if they already existed, then they can still build on them.
I'm just curious.
Well, it'll have to go before the planner, and if they're trying to do something that doesn't meet code, it won't be allowed. But PUD process is,
That's not the PUD process.
that isn't, there's no critical area that they're bumping up against. So. But yeah, so anyway, it's just changing the allowed size from 3 acres down to 2, so this gets to be used more often in the city. That's where it came from. Any other public comment regarding the PUD size change? All right, I'm not hearing any more public comment on that. Moving on to the last one then, ordinance 2025-04, amending sections chapter 25 for short subdivisions.
Okay, all right. You've already described that this would be amending section 25 or chapter 25. Right now, the Vader Municipal Code requires a short plat or allows a short plat for 4 lots or fewer. And so 5 lots or more has to go through the long subdivision process. And that term is actually correct. It takes longer and there's more steps to it. And when you do the short subdivision process, it allows an applicant to go through the procedures a lot more quickly. State law allows short platting to be done with 9 lots or fewer. And so the intent here is to just come current with state law, allow applicants to get through the procedures in a more timely fashion. They still need to turn in, the required survey work and the platting and turn in the required civil plans and get all the infrastructure, improvements constructed, but kind of a quicker process than a long plat would be. So this section this ordinance would change various sections of code because there's a lot of definitions. So instead of saying short plats are 4 or fewer lots, it will say 9 or fewer lots. And then there's also some definitions that would be updated. And for instance, the definition of long subdivision would be 10 or more lots instead of 5 or more lots. So it's just some consistency edits, and it's not a very lengthy ordinance, but it is another, in keeping with everything else you've been reviewing tonight, it's another tool for the developers and property owners in the city to be able to have more predictability and timeliness with processing requests for subdivisions of land and allowing for some more creativity. So I don't have a lot more to add, and everything else I said about SEPA, commerce, noticing, and all those requirements have been met. So I'm available for questions again.
The numbers all be changed.
That's it. Instead of 4 or less, we're going to 9. We would go to 9 or less. As I said, it just makes the process a little bit easier for an applicant. But all the same requirements are there. If we can still ask for sidewalks, we can still ask for road improvements, we can still ask for all those things if they are appropriate, just as we would on any of the other ones.
Did the cost go up?
All of our costs went up this year, but this would be considered I think the short plat is less than a long, so I guess you would get a break if in the past you would have had to do a long subdivision versus now it's considered a short subdivision. The applicant could actually save a little bit of money.
And they save money with the amount of time it takes, because a short plat typically can be done administratively, whereas the long plat needs to go through various public hearings. One thing, if a short plat doesn't have critical areas on the site, it also does not need to go through SEPA review. But if there's critical areas on the site, a SEPA is still required, but there's fewer steps involved overall with a short plat versus a long plat. So it's a less cumbersome process for both staff and anyone applying for the short plat versus a long plat.
Has this already been approved, or is it going to be approved soon, this one?
It's up for council consideration tonight.
All 4 of them are. All 4 of them are.
Yeah, it's been beat up in planning committee for months and waited. Council seated it before, and so.
So if you vote on it tonight, then it goes into effect tomorrow morning?
We have to advertise it, and then it takes 5 days, I think, once it's in the paper, something like that. 5 days, is that right,
I
Kirsten?
believe so.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah,
Let me look at one of the ordinances. It usually says it takes effect 5 days.
so-
Yeah.
something like that.
So your effective date of each ordinance says this ordinance shall be effective 5 days after publication as provided by law.
So if we put it in the paper tomorrow, or next week for publishing on Wednesday, and then 5 days after Wednesday next week, if council adopted it. Public comments on short subdivision changes. Any other comment? Any other public comment? Just ask again. Any other staff comments?
Sorry, no, I don't.
Okay. No,
Thank
just-
you.
If there's no other questions from city council, then I can have a motion to close this public hearing.
I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Motion, Mr. Parsons, to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Goff. Any discussion? All right, these public hearings are closed at 6:59 PM. Thank you very much.
Ready, Sheila? There we go.
Moving into city business. Item number 1, council to consider ordinance 2025-01, adding chapter 20.82 for development agreements.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2025-01.
We have a motion by Mr. Parsons to approve 2025-01. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Hall. Wanted to look at that agenda report or agenda thing. I know there were a couple of different options I wanted to make sure that we were covering. Oh, okay. Yeah, that covers it. Sure enough. Okay. We have a first and we have a second with Mr. Hall. Further discussion on development agreements? Any discussion or questions or clarifications on development agreements? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor of ordinance 2025-01, adding chapter 2082 for development agreements, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Can I say I don't know? This is all, I didn't get this before and I'm new, so this has been around, I guess. I just, not having a phone, not having internet, this was it for me to read it, so.
Oh,
And then without the other two guys here, I kind of feel like, I mean, there's two of you, so if you want to, I don't want to say yes or no when I really don't feel that informed.
okay.
I'll just throw in real quick. What a person can do is abstain from making a vote, but how many members of council do you have, and will you have a quorum without her vote?
We do not have a quorum without her vote. So, so if that's how, is that you feel that all 4 of the ordinances?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't really know them, so.
Okay. Okay, hearing that then,
Since we've held
Call with-
a hearing to, go ahead. Mike.
What's that?
we don't need to hold a public hearing again. We can put these off until next week if that is.
We are meeting next week.
We are meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're meeting in a week.
And so you can kind of take a look at them again.
withdraw my motion and make a motion that we postpone these till next week's meeting.
Okay. Mr. Parsons is removing his motion. So does City Council feel the same about all four of these? Would like to address the consideration for all four ordinances next week? I'm assuming Mr. Parsons is a yes on that. Randy, do you feel the same way?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not a problem. We have the public hearings already, so we don't need to redo those. And we can just have City Council take a look at them next week, and hopefully we have a few more people here and folks can take another look at these ordinances. Okay. Thank you, Kirsten, for all of your work on these, and we'll look at these again next week for council adoption.
Okay, sounds good. Take care, everyone.
All right, so that's up through item number 4. So moving on to item number 5, council confirmation for new deputy clerk, Caitlin Ellison. So as you know, we have a new face sitting here, and we did extend a job offer to Caitlin this week. This is actually our second day, and so we're looking for a confirmation from City Council. So far, so great. She's doing really good in the office, and she has a lot of experience with web development and marketing and other type of cashiering experience. And so I have no issues at all asking for your confirmation, Ms. Ellison.
I'm in.
Got a motion?
I'll make a motion that we confirm the new deputy clerk, Caitlin Ellison.
So a motion by Mr. Parsons to confirm Deputy Clerk Caitlin Ellison. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Goff. Third from Mr. Hall.
Oh, thanks.
If there's any other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any
opposed? Motion carries.
You can run a backhoe too, right?
I'll figure it out.
Toss her some keys.
My break.
Do we don't do the hands up thing for the deputy clerk, do we? No, I don't think so.
Oh,
You don't have to swear
Yeah.
on anything. So, excellent. Well, thank you for being part of the Vader team.
Welcome.
Moving on to item number 6, council to discuss legalization of marijuana businesses. So at the last council meeting, I gave a lot of information to city council about this to take a look at and figure out what is important to the city and to the council members for different nuances to a future code. Does the council members have anything to report at this particular time regarding that?
No.
I have a question.
Hold on one second. No, nothing from Mr. Hall. Ms. Goff, you have anything at this
No.
time?
Not right.
Okay. Yes.
I'm just curious what changed your mind, because it used to be that the city council was against having those businesses in town, and now, of course, it'd have to be, we don't have that much commercial area, so it's gonna have to be close to the church and with kids.
It can't.
So council has, some members of the council have a change of heart, I guess, over the years, and wanted to take a second look at legalizing marijuana businesses within the city limits. There's a variety of things that we would include in the code. It wouldn't just be a blanket allowance. There are lots of additions the city can add in, besides just the 1,000 feet away from parks and schools and things like that. You can add religious institutions. You can add a variety of things. Obviously, it would be confined to our commercial zoned areas, which also does further limit it. By the time you do all of that, there really isn't even a place within the city limits currently that you could put a business.
But it would okay us, and then we would get the funds, the taxes from the marijuana sales from the state.
So if,
And that's what I want.
if a city or other municipality does not allow businesses, you do not get your share of the state taxes that come from it.
It always comes down to money.
Yep,
And so,
and we're told.
yeah, so, and right now for a comparable city, it's probably around $2,000 a year that we're missing out on because we do not allow it. And so that's the gist of it.
And it goes up.
I think we take all of the regulations, I said this last meeting, all the regulations from all those cities that you think, and we put them all in one city of Vader. We don't want you here. We don't want it here.
But see, you know, all of the
It's
people
allowed, but
feel
not
that
allowed.
way, that not all the people.
We already fought this fight.
Allowed, but
Years
impossible.
ago, you fought the fight. Like she said, it was years ago. New people have moved in, new things have happened, you know, and you have you have the anti, you won't even, you know, even consider anything,
I
you
don't
know,
even
and
consider it
so.
because we spent so much time the last time. We had council people and we had planning committee all getting all huffy and puffy and storming out the door, and
When
there
was
were
that?
fights.
When was that?
It's fun times.
It was a crazy time.
I mean, just out of curiosity, have you met Jason?
I have met Jason, and it didn't pass before, and I think it's a waste of time. I don't know how much time we've already spent on this,
But that's
For-
your opinion, like I've said.
right?
But you want to take the money though, I mean, why give up the $2,000?
Which it's just a little piece, a little bit closer. It's just one more thing. It's like outlawing bullets,
But you
not
actually,
guns.
you
It's
actually
legal
think
still.
people are lined up to come in and put in businesses? And right now, the licenses and everything, there's a waiting line. So it isn't like 10 people are gonna try to build. And where are they gonna build? The circles overlap everything.
That's
So
perfect.
then why are you worried?
There's plenty of others that can say yes to it if they want to.
I
Why?
respect that.
It's just a waste of time and money. Every time I hear this, I just like, holy cow, it's like the kid that wants a cookie and you say no, and then they say, can I have another cookie now? Can I have a cookie now? How about now?
Now, see, that's,
Or munchies, I should say.
So far, it hasn't cost anything. I've done
How much
the,
time have you wasted on it?
We don't pay him, he doesn't.
I know, we don't pay him, but he does a lot of stuff.
so I've done the local research and the information that I've given to council to take a look at the variety of different cities and what they've done so that we can draft something and put something together ourselves first before we spend attorney revenue or money on it. So
The attorney eventually is gonna have.
eventually, yeah. So
but we can copy something.
it would
else.
probably, it would probably, by the time it gets approved, and I imagine it's a land use change, I think, and so it has to get, you have to have a SEPA, and it probably have to have public hearings, and so by the time we advertise all of that, I imagine we probably use our first year's take just to put it into action. That's my guess. All right, well, council members, like I said, I gave you information last meeting. Please take a look at that again and find out what is important to you and bring that back to the next council meeting if you can. So, any other discussion on marijuana business? Okay, moving on to the last item, item number 7. This is the addition, council to consider the chlorine pump purchases. So in the budget for the new year, we did put in money for this upgrade. So there are 2 chlorine pumps down at the wastewater plant. They're new, they were new obviously when we built the new plant. but they're kind of oversized for what we need, and because of that, they're being stressed. I know it sounds funny that being oversized, they'd be stressed, but they're being turned on rapidly on and off again. It's not really what they were designed for. And so we've already had these pumps fail, and we've had to have them rebuilt. And so originally, the first few times they've been under warranty, but in the future, they're not going to be under warranty. And so we want to replace these with a more appropriate sized pump. And not only will it be appropriate sized, it will be rebuildable by our wastewater operator. And so we won't have to send them off anymore and to get rebuilt. And so it'll save us money. And so, like I said, we did put that in the budget. We did get a few different estimates for the pump. On the purchase order, it would be the price of the pump, as well as a rebuild kit. And so we're looking for council approval of this purchase.
I make a motion that we approve the new chlorine pump. Purchase.
We have a motion by Mr. Parsons to approve the purchase order for the chlorine pumps. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Goff. Discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Mr. Wilson, our operator, doesn't ask for much down there, so he'll be very happy to get his new pumps.
That's cool that we can rebuild them.
Yep, yeah, he'll be able to rebuild them, and we'll be able to rebuild them into the future. So, any elected official comments before we close this meeting? All right, this meeting's adjourned at 7:15 PM. Thank you.